Right, I welcome you to this presentation for continuing professional development, real estate economics. Taking into note as part of introduction, this subject is very important in the fact that we try to showcase the dynamics that happens in the South African housing system since 1994 up to now. Major elements that we're going to focus on is outcomes of this presentation. We're going to look into the macro factors impacting the housing industry in South Africa. I'm also going to focus on the market sizing of the housing industry in South Africa. I would also focus further on the property valuation methodologies that must be used in emerging markets so as to establish the actual value of the housing. And apart from that, it is also important to focus on the programs that the South African government is coming up with in terms of eradicating the housing problems in South Africa. And apart from that, it is also of utmost significance to understand the regulatory framework in which the real estate industry works upon. So these are some of the areas that I'm going to focus on. To start with, let's look at how macroeconomic factors affect the housing industry. We have got two major players in the housing industry in South Africa that impact the housing industry in South Africa. We have the role that is played by commercial banks as well as the National Treasury on behalf of the government. What is it that these two major players are doing is that they try by all means to ensure that they resource and mobilize funding to ensure that all South Africans have got equal access to housing in South Africa. So the government has to come up with various housing programs, such as the social housing schemes. We have got the financial linked individual system program as well into place. Those are programs that the South African government is actually pursuing in order to ensure that everyone have got equal access to the accommodation in South Africa. So these are some of the macroeconomic factors that do affect the housing system in South Africa. Then, furthermore, we also need to look at the primary and the secondary markets as far as the housing system is concerned in South Africa. We have got what we refer to as the property market. When we're talking of the primary property market, it is defined as a system of coming up with new houses in a particular financial year. And it is important to note that we also have the secondary market, which is defined as affordable housing market is underscored under the undervalued sectors. So it's of utmost significance to understand the dynamics in terms of different suburbs in South Africa. Please note that we have got various types of residential areas in South Africa. We've got the upmarket, we've got the conventional or the old high density suburbs. And you'll find out that in terms of the approach that we use in terms of evaluating these housing system are different pertaining on the location, maybe also in terms of the housing material structure that have been used for to build up each structure. And furthermore, it is very important to note that within the housing system in South Africa, we had a major impact in terms of the sovereign credit rating downgrade in 2017, in year 2017. How did this downgrade impact the housing system in South Africa? How did it impact the real estate industry in South Africa? Please note that when the South African economy was actually downgraded to the junk status, it resulted in shrinking or squeezing the real estate market, because the major impact that happened after the downgrade was that the real interest rates for accessing mortgage loans to acquire loans upsurge, and it becomes difficult for home seekers to access loans from banks. And apart from that, also those who have already accessed the loans, they found it difficult to make repayments of the loans that they've already accessed. So this was one of the major dynamics that actually happened recently in 2017. So within the real estate market industry, it is of significant importance that we need to come up with intervention measures. How do we overcome problems that are associated with sovereign downgrade credit rating system? How do we solve that? It is a major question that we also need to answer in this aspect. Moving forward, we also look at the impact of interest rates and inflation rate. As I earlier alluded to, that we suffered a downgrade in the credit rating system. This has got a major impact on the real interest rates of the mortgage loans as well as inflation rate. But however, the prime lending rate remains stable at 10.25% per annum. And also, it is of utmost significance to note that in November 2017, the governor of the South African Reserve Bank also announced that the repo rate will remain actually unchanged at 16.5%. Then how do we make use of this and ensure that we are likely to benefit from these rates, from these interest rates that have been the repo rate? Furthermore, looking at the building index growth of new homes built space, basically, the average building cost of new housing increased by 8.6% year by year to an average of about 7,078 per square meter in 9 months, up to compared with 6,519 per square meter in the corresponding period last year. In real terms, after adjustment for inflation, the building cost for new houses was up by 2.9% year by year, basing on the average consumer price inflation rate of 5.5% over the 9-month period. The average building cost of alterations and renovations completed in respect of existing houses averaged 6,426 per square meter in January to September, rising by 9.3% year by year over this period. So it is also of utmost significance that within the real estate industry, we need to take note of these changes and make sure that we come up with interventions whenever there are changes. How best can we actually solve and benefit and make sure that we are likely to meet targets of ensuring that we play an essential role in providing affordable quality accommodation to the South African citizens. But all the same, we also need to make sure that the real estate agents as business, they also need to remain profitable, be able to run on a going concern basis. Now, looking at the property market size, Section 21 of the Constitution provides that everyone shall have the right access to adequate housing. As I earlier alluded at the beginning of this session, that we have got the regulatory framework within the real estate industry. And this regulatory framework, they subscribe to the South African Constitution of 1994. And this is the supreme law. Whatever bills and strategies that we come up with within the real estate market, they should be within the regulatory framework. How many properties do we have registered in the deeds office? We also need to take note of the changes. What were the dynamics since 1994 up to date? How many houses were actually registered by 1994 and how many houses are registered up to date? So it is of utmost significance so that we can actually see that are we able to meet our targets as the real estate industry in terms of providing houses to the South African citizens. So the total number of registered properties in deeds amounted to 6.5 million in terms of value. That's about 5 trillion in terms of rent value. So it is also significant for us to note that. But apart from that, the total number of affordable housing properties registered in the deeds office amounted to 3,498,319. Then in terms of the rand value, this amounted to 921 million on average in terms of the average value that have been actually offered to the South African citizens to date. So it is of utmost significance for us to note that. Then let's look at the property valuation methodologies. What valuation methods some banks use to value properties in South Africa? We have got quite a number of valuations methods that actually banks use in terms of determining, as a consumer, are you able to qualify for this housing scheme or not? But there are certain factors that they also take into consideration in terms of this valuation system. One, they also need to look at the location. Where is the property located? Plays a significant role as to determine the value at which that property should be sold. We also look at the market dynamics in terms of the demand of the housing as well as the supply of the housing in the South African market. They also consider conditions. They also look at the neighborhood. The infrastructural development surrounds the property which is up for sale. They also look at the age of the property. How old is the property? If we look at the value of buildings in old suburbs of South Africa, such as Soweto, taking into account that that property have been actually built with the same material as the structure that we found in the certain suburbs. But yet, if you see at the value part of it, you would actually see that the value of the property that is situated in certain suburbs is likely to fetch a higher market value as compared to a property, the same property that is situated in an old suburb such as Soweto in South Africa. So it is of utmost significance for us to make sure that we note that and those dynamics in terms of valuation of properties. Furthermore, looking into detail at property valuation systems, basically, we have one, the comparable sales methodology. On this method, we are simply arriving at the selling price of the property by comparing the price at which other properties in the same market and in the same location have been sold for. Then we can determine the price. So this method is actually used in an already existing market and location. We can't use the comparable sales method in a new market. But however, we have got another method that is also suitable for new structures, which takes into consideration the cost of material, the cost of value addition, for us to arrive at the market and the selling price of the property. So these are some of the methods that the South African commercial banks actually use to arrive at the selling price. So as real estate agency or as property practitioners, we need to understand the applicability of these methodologies and the circumstances under which we can actually use and apply in order to achieve our target, but all the same ensuring that we are not depriving the home seekers, because our objective is to ensure that we offer quality housing to the South African citizens across the board. As I have alluded to, that we have got another method of valuation that takes into account the cost of material, the cost of value addition. We have got the depreciation replacement cost method. This takes into account the cost of material plus a markup. Then we arrive at the selling price of the property. But this can only be used in a newly established market where we have got limited information pertaining any other property that have been sold. Now, looking at the government housing programs, I've indicated at the beginning of this session that it is one of our major learning outcomes for this presentation to understand the housing programs that the South African government is actually doing for its citizens. And one of these is the social housing program. What is the social housing program? Social housing program is actually designed to assist low-income earners who do not qualify for home loans from commercial banks or from financial institutions. But how do the South African citizens qualify for this housing scheme? One, you need to be a first-time home buyer. And apart from that, you also need your income, either single or jointly. It needs to lie between 1,501 to 7,500. Moreover, you also need to be a South African citizen or a permanent resident with a valid work permit. And legally, you need to be over 18 years and above for you to qualify for this housing program. But however, we've got another one, a housing program that the South African government has also come up with to suit the criteria of those who do not qualify for the social housing program, which is known as the FLISP, Financial Linked Individual System Program. It's a government subsidized housing program aimed to enable the low-income segment to access mortgage loans. What is the basis or the criteria for you to qualify for this? So as real estate property practitioners, we need to understand the criteria that is used for our clientele to qualify for this housing program, so that we can actually be able to educate them and they can be able to make informed, viable decision. One, you need to be a first-time home buyer. Then in terms of income, joint or single, monthly, it should lie between 3.5 and 15,000. Furthermore, you also need to be a South African resident or a permanent resident with a valid work permit. So these are some of the requirements that our clientele needs to suit in order for them to qualify for the FLISP housing program. Then in terms of the application of FLISP, it is important to note that we have got two ways in which you can actually register for a FLISP program. We have got the pre-registration and the post-registration. But as real estate property practitioners, we need to advise our clientele to understand which registration should actually suit them and why. We need to recommend them for the pre-registration for the following reasons. The loan-to-value ratio is a bit lower as compared to the post-registration. the repayment and the interest rate is actually lower as compared to the post-registration rate. As you can see from those statistics, in terms of repayment and interest rate, pre-registration, we have got 3,148, which is about 9.38%. Then we have got 3,750 rands for post-registration, which is about 9.5%. So it is of utmost significance for us to have this information so that we can be able to relate the right information to our clientele base. And furthermore, now let's look at the key acts which drive the property industry. We have got the Consumer Protection Act of 2011. We have got the Financial Intelligence. The Consumer Protection Act, it actually aims at ensuring that each and every South African citizen, you have got an equal access to accommodation in a manner that is fair and sustainable in the marketplace. Our consumers need actually to access accommodation in a manner that they are not disadvantaged. Then apart from that, we also have the Financial Intelligence Act. As providers of home loans or as real estate agents, we need to have information relating to our clients. We need to confirm the identity of our clients as well as their physical address so that we can actually channel home loans to the right people who are likely to use, those who are in need of the accommodation within the South African market. So we need to gather and have enough information for us to meet this. And furthermore, we also have the National Credit Act of 2005. In terms of the agreement that we need to enter with our clientele base, it should be entered in a language that is plain, that can be easily understood by our target clientele so that they can actually be in a position to make more informed choices as to which housing programs or housing loans they should apply and they should qualify. However, we have got a new development within the real estate market. We have the Property Practitioners Bills of 2017, which has come into place to replace the Estate Agents Affairs Act. However, I want to emphasize that these key acts, they subscribe to the South African Constitution of 1994. And the South African Constitution is the supreme law of the country. So whatever bills that you come up with in terms of improving the regulated framework within the real estate agents, we need to ensure that they follow the regulated framework of the South African constitutions. However, why are we substituting the Estate Agents Affairs Act of 1976 and the Property Practitioners Bills? What are the major dynamics? What are the major changes? What is it that the Property Practitioners Bill is bringing to the South African real estate market? It is actually trying to improve the regulatory framework. The Property Practitioners Bill is also trying to attempt to protect the home seekers or the consumers. It is also trying by all means to protect the providers of home loans within the South African market. The Property Practitioner Bills, it's a standard bill that actually meets the international standards within the real estate agents market worldwide. So it will be credible enough for whatever we do within the real estate market. As we deliver our mandate, we need to ensure that we are operating within the Property Practitioners Bill recommendations. Then in terms of bank application process, for us to access mortgage loans, home seekers need to fill in a loan application form, and this loan application form needs to be vetted in line with the 5 C's, what we refer to as the 5 C's of credit management, so as to scrutinize the character of our clientele to see if they are able to meet, if they've been able to pay their previous bills. We need to check how much in terms of credit are they owing to other credit providers before we finalize the loan application form. If it fails to meet that criteria, it means that we need to deny. This is very important. The loan vetting process is important because we want by all means to avoid non-performing home mortgage loans. We need to make sure that whenever we issue loans, they are actually put into use and be able to meet the needs of home seekers within the South African country. Apart from that, we've got different types of loans that our consumers can actually access. We have got the secured loan and the unsecured loan. The secured loan, it is very important to note that you need to pledge a security against a secured loan in order for you to be given a mortgage finance to access loans. But is this applicable to new home seekers? Let's take, for example, a young South African. We have just joined the employment fraternity, and that person has no any assets to pledge as security. How do they access the mortgage finance? How do they acquire houses? So it is very important for us to note that secured loans, to some extent, yes, they are good in terms of the fact that if I deprive of paying back the loan, then the bank is secured, can actually take the asset and sell out. But are we meeting the targets of new home seekers? Think of a young South African. Are we able for them to qualify for this loan? However, we've got another type of loan which is unsecured, which is actually issued against your own personal income. Maybe they have to consider the amount of salary that you get for you to be given these personal loans. So this is where the South Africans without security to acquire mortgage loans can actually be able to suit. But however, these are unsecured loans, and it means that they are risky to issue. Then we have got housing loans provided by major banks. The major banks that provide housing loans in South Africa, we have got the ABSA, the Standard Bank, the First National Bank, Nedbank, SAL, and Capitec. For further information on this, you can also visit the alluded website there and get more information as to how you can access these loans. Then, furthermore, we have got a type of closing costs for home loans. We have got transfer costs and bond costs. Costs are indicative and none will be provided by the attorneys, but it is very important for us to note that to be well aware and inform our clientele as to the type of costs that they are likely to incur as they apply for different types of loans. And this part of costs are transfer costs and bonds costs. But for new homeowners, are they able to meet these transfer costs as well as bond costs? We need to come up with a solution to that. That brings me to the conclusion of the presentation. Please remember to answer the 10 multiple choice questions to obtain 5 verifiable CBT points for this session.